P-47, the Thunderbolt, the complete history of the P-47. Before freedom had a name in the skies of Europe, before victory became inevitable, before the world knew that tyranny could be broken by wings of steel, there was darkness. The year was 1943. The Third Reich controlled the continent. German fighters owned the air. Allied bombers fell from the sky in flames, their crews never seeing home again. Young American boys crossed an ocean to fight a war that wasn't theirs by birth, but became theirs by duty. They climbed into aircraft that were supposed to bring them back alive. Too often, they didn't return. Europe was burning, democracy was bleeding, and the free world was running out of time. But America does not surrender. America does not accept defeat. When the world is darkest, when evil seems unstoppable, when hope feels like a distant memory, America builds. Not monuments, not memorials, not speeches. Power. Raw, unstoppable, overwhelming power. And in the factories of Long Island, in the minds of brilliant engineers, in the hands of workers who believed in something greater than themselves, that power took shape. 7 tons of American steel wrapped around the most powerful engine ever mounted on a single-seat fighter. 18 cylinders, 2,000 horsepower, 8 machine guns, and a spirit that refused to die. When it first roared to life, the ground shook. When it climbed into combat, the enemy learned fear. When Allied pilots saw it coming, they knew they would survive another day. And when German soldiers heard that sound, that deep, thunderous roar cutting through the clouds, they knew their time was running out. This is not just the story of an airplane. This is the story of American resolve turned into firepower, American ingenuity made manifest in the sky, American courage given wings that could carry it through hell itself and bring it home. This is the story of the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, the aircraft that didn't just fight America's war, the aircraft that won it. Chapter 1. Genesis, forged in necessity. To understand the Thunderbolt, you must first understand the crisis that created it. In 1940, the Battle of Britain showed the world what modern air combat truly meant. Fast, maneuverable fighters clashing at altitude, death measured in seconds, victory decided by split-second decisions, and superior machines. The U.S. Air Corps was not yet at war, but American military leaders were watching. They saw the Supermarine Spitfire dueling with the Messerschmitt Bf-109. They saw how speed, climb rate, and altitude performance determined survival. And they knew that America's existing fighters, excellent as they were, would not be enough for what was coming. The U.S. Army Air Corps issued a demand that seemed almost impossible. They wanted a fighter that could escort bombers deep into enemy territory, a fighter that could operate at altitudes above 30,000 feet, where the air was thin and engines gasped for oxygen, a fighter that could outclimb, outrun, and outfight anything the enemy could put in the air. And most critically, a fighter that could take punishment and bring American pilots home alive. Republic Aviation Corporation, led by the visionary designer Alexander Kartveli, accepted the challenge. But Kartveli understood something fundamental that would define the P-47's entire existence. In war, elegance is luxury, survival is necessity. Other designers chased grace, Kartveli chased power. The heart of his design was the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, a massive radial engine that produced more power than any fighter engine in American inventory. But radial engines created drag. They were large, bulky, difficult to streamline. Most designers avoided them for fighters, preferring sleek inline engines. Kartveli embraced the challenge. If the engine was large, the aircraft would be large. If drag was inevitable, speed would come from raw power, not aerodynamic perfection. If weight was a consequence, strength would be the advantage. The result was unprecedented. The P-47 would be the heaviest single-engine fighter of the entire war. At over 13,000 pounds fully loaded, it weighed as much as some medium bombers. Critics called it absurd. They said it would never turn with enemy fighters. They said it was too heavy, too big, too brutish. They were right about everything except what mattered most. It worked. The first prototype flew in May 1941. Test pilots were stunned. Yes, it was massive. Yes, it was heavy. But when that R2800 engine reached full throttle, when the turbocharger spooled up and forced compressed air into the cylinders, the Thunderbolt didn't just fly. It exploded into the sky. Climb rate exceeded expectations. Top speed shattered predictions. At high altitude, where turbocharging gave it an advantage thinner air couldn't erase, the P-47 was faster than anything America had ever built. But speed was only part of the equation. Kartveli's obsession with pilot survival led to design choices that seemed excessive on paper, but proved invaluable in combat. The cockpit was surrounded by armor plating. The fuel tanks were self-sealing, designed to close around bullet holes before fire could ignite. The engine, already massive, was protected by additional armor in critical areas. The entire aircraft was overbuilt, reinforced, designed to absorb damage that would destroy lesser machines. In December 1941, when Pearl Harbor brought America into the war, the P-47 was still in testing. But the urgency of combat accelerated everything. The Army Air Forces needed fighters immediately. Production was authorized, contracts were signed, factories expanded. By early 1943, the first Thunderbolts were arriving in England, assigned to the 8th Air Force, the Army Bomber Command tasked with the most dangerous mission of the war, daylight strategic bombing of Nazi Germany. American B-17 and B-24 bombers were flying deep into German airspace in broad daylight, attempting to destroy factories, rail yards, oil refineries, and military installations. The losses were catastrophic. German fighters swarmed the formations, attacking from every angle. Bomber crews died by the hundreds. The Thunderbolt arrived not as a savior, but as an experiment. Could this massive, heavy fighter actually escort bombers? Could it survive against experienced Luftwaffe pilots flying proven aircraft like the Bf-109 and FW-190? The answer would be written in blood, fire, and victory across the skies of Europe. Chapter 2: Baptism of Fire, Learning War. The first American pilots to fly the Thunderbolt in combat were not impressed. They had heard stories of the sleek, agile Spitfire. They had hoped for something similar, a nimble dogfighter that could turn inside German fighters and engage in classic aerial duels. What they got, instead, was a 7-ton beast that felt like flying a freight train. Early missions were frustrating. German fighters, flying lighter Bf-109s and FW-190s, would bait American Thunderbolt pilots into turning fights at low altitude. The P-47, heavy and momentum-driven, couldn't match their turn radius. German fighters would circle inside, gaining position, forcing the Americans to break off or risk being shot down. Losses mounted, confidence wavered. But American pilots are nothing if not adaptive. They didn't abandon the Thunderbolt. They learned to fight the way the Thunderbolt was designed to fight. And the man who taught them was a living legend, Hub Zemke, commander of the 56th Fighter Group, one of the most aggressive and innovative leaders in the entire Army Air Forces. Zemke understood the Thunderbolt's true strengths. It couldn't turn with a Bf-109, but it didn't need to. What the P-47 could do better than any fighter in the sky was dive. When a Thunderbolt pushed its nose down and opened the throttle, it became a meteor. Gravity and power combined into unstoppable speed. German fighters couldn't follow, they couldn't catch it, and if they tried, the Thunderbolt pilot would simply extend, climb back to altitude using that massive engine, and reset the fight on his terms. This became the doctrine. Altitude is life. The Thunderbolt pilot who maintained altitude controlled the engagement. He could dive on enemy fighters, attack with devastating speed, and escape before the enemy could respond. And if the enemy tried to climb after him, the P-47's superior high-altitude performance gave it the advantage. But the real breakthrough came when pilots discovered the Thunderbolt's terrifying firepower. 8 M2 Browning Moss's Browning M2 Buffer rounds Moss's Browning M2 Bertha Browning 8 M2 Browning Moss's Browning machine guns, 4 in each wing, each loaded with over 300 rounds. When all 8 guns fired simultaneously, they produced a combined rate of fire exceeding 100 rounds per second. The volume of fire was so dense that